Williams. I own Mesquite Company. I deal mainly in mesquite, firewood. I produce mesquite lumber for other furniture makers, and I deal in various pieces of furniture making myself. A lot of what I do is I make fireplace mantles for new homes. That's what we have here today. We have a typical future fireplace mantle. This tree was probably 18 inches. It comes from my family's ranch in Llano County, Texas. Today what we want to accomplish is cutting the ends, cutting the mantle to the proper length that we're going to have it. We're going to then grind the sap and the bark off the edge. Third, we're going to start sanding, and then we'll come back and start our epoxying process. Now that we've got the edges cut off and our mantle cut to length, I'm going to work on getting the bark and the sap off the front of the mantle. I've been over this with the grinder one time, and I'm going to do another round because you can still see yellow on top of the kind of reddish mesquite color, and that's what we're trying to remove. This is the mesquite right here. This is the yellow sap that needs to come off still, but this is what it's going to look like. It's really hard to see the color contrast, but you can barely see it. Next, after we've got most of the sap off, there's a little bit here and here and here, but I think I can get it with my smoothing attachment. So we're going to start the next process. We're going to get all these teeth marks and grooves out, kind of smooth this over, and then we'll move on to sanding the rest of them. And we'll move on to sanding the mantle. Next step in finishing our mantle is I'm going to belt sand the top of it, get a lot of these grooves out. This is from the sawmill, and it was actually, you can tell the sawmill blade was getting dull. That's why it's so much like that, rippled. This belt sander, I'll sand one way, then I'll come back and sand the other way at an angle, such as like this. And when I come back, I'll be like that. Now I've got my orbital sander. I put on a 60 grit paper, and I'm going to go with a 50, and then we're going to go to 80, then we're going to go to about 120, and go up from there. Now we're going to do this side exactly like we did the other side. We're going to belt sand it with heavy coarse 36 sandpaper, go to 50, then we're going to start with the orbital sander. Next, we're going to start our epoxy process. This is the resin, this is the hardener. It's 1 part to 1 part. I use a Dixie cup to measure up to exactly to that line with the resin, and exactly the same line with the hardener. It's very important to get these right because your epoxy will never dry unless you do it just right. When I get them both poured, I'll pour them together into 1 cup, stir them together, then add a little dark black dye. I think this is real dark brown or black will work. epoxy for 5 minutes to mix the resin and the hardener in your die. The next step in our epoxy process is we tape these cracks where we're expecting the epoxy to run out when we put it in the crack. And what this does, it doesn't really stop it, it slows it down. Okay, we've let our epoxy dry overnight. It's very hard. It'll sand off and it'll leave the epoxy in the cracks that we put it there for. Okay, we finished sanding our epoxy and our top side of our mantle again. You can see it's filled in the cracks, all these little cracks, and when we put our Danish oil on at the very end to treat our mantle, this will be black. It will turn black, and it brings out the grain of the mesquite wood. It's really pretty. We're going to turn it over now, and we're going to repeat the process on the other side. Okay, one of our final steps is to sand the face of this mantle. We're going to start with 80. We're also going to sand the edges, the sides. We're going to start with 80 and then we're going to move to 120 and then 220. Make it nice and smooth. Okay, our final step in preparing our mantle is we're going to cover it with Danish oil. It's just a clear oil. It's not a polyurethane. It's not a shellac. It's just a wood oil. And this is just a neutral color. It looks kind of dark, kind of like iced tea, but it's really, when you put it on, it's kind of clear. It just brings out the natural grains and colors in the mesquite. And I usually just, it says rub it on, but I usually put it on pretty heavy. As you can see, immediately the mantle just starts to change. Okay, this is our finished product. It's 5 feet long. It's 12 inches wide. Its widest point is about 4 inches thick, and it's going to a home and college station. One thing about these mantles is they're always different. They're like a snowflake. Every mantle's different. Some are similar, but they all have their own shape and style. And thanks for watching. And this is little Joe, the shop dog. He's 12 years old, we think. He was a little orphan. And his breath smells like a goldfish tank. So I'm going to go ahead and set him down.